All right, let's learn some New Testament Greek together. The method here is that we're going to work through some comprehensible input exercises where I'm going to try to use English as little as possible. And then in the end, we will build up to more or less understanding Luke 13:18 to 21. Let's get started. So on the left-hand side here, I have a couple of words, and the way we're going to do most of these exercises is I'm gonna give the Greek, and then after that give like a representation image. Sometimes I'll describe some things in English, but I'll try not to directly translate. There may be a few times where certain words will just be that much easier to translate instead of try to give an image or describe it or something, but I'll try not to do that. And then on your end, if you have learned translating in the past from Greek to English, that's fine. You can use that. It's not wrong to use that, but try to go beyond that. Try to also, think about the concepts. So think about your own images. If you're rewatching this, think about the images that I've done here, the images in the previous video if you've seen that, or if you can think of even experiences. Once you know what these words mean, a time that you were in that situation where you did that, or someone you knew did that, for example. So those kinds of things. So that'll be the goal. And for the first set here, you'll notice there's 3 dots because instead of a period, because you can't technically just stop a sentence right there. It's very unnatural, so that's why I put those 3 dots there. So on the left-hand side, we have O anthropos legi, and bam, there's an image to help us understand what it means. So there's a person there, and they're doing something, right? O anthropos legi. Lei is what they're doing. Now when I add this word nin o anthropos lei, that means, they're not doing it in the future, they're not doing it tomorrow, they're not doing it in the past, they're not doing it yesterday. It's something in the moment. It's happening currently, right? So there's an English word for that, but I'm trying not to use the word because I want the concepts to be what you're imagining. Nin o anthropos lei. Now on the right-hand side here, you'll notice in some, I'll probably, like I said, I'll try to clarify the image a little bit. So here, there's this guy, and he's looking at this newspaper, and the newspaper's what's from the past, right? It's not from the future. So he's looking at this. There's an event that happened in the past, and that's what he's supposed to be imagining, is the event that happened in the past, what's talked about in the newspaper. So here now we have o anthropos ipen. So the difference on the left was lei, and on the right is ipen. In both cases, it's o anthropos. Okay, so on the left, o anthropos is the stick figure guy, but on the right, o anthropos is also the stick figure guy. That's the one described in the sentence. Okay, so o anthropos ipen. Χθες o anthropos ipen. And once again, this is not something that's happening in the future. In this case, though, it's not something that's happening currently. It's something that had already happened. So, ipen lei. O anthropos lei, o anthropos ipen. And now, on the left-hand side, we have nin o anthropos lei. We just had that, actually. Same image. But here's a little bit of a new sentence to build off of that first sentence and that same image, that same concept. O anthropos lei. And you'll notice I got rid of the 3 dots. Now we have a period. Now this is how it could be a full sentence. You can stop now. So anthropos lei, and then you're like, what? What? And then the answer, oti Jesus estin Vasilevs. O anthropos lei, oti Jesus estin Vasilevs. Okay, so that's that sentence. On the right-hand side, once again, the same sentence. Χθες ο άνθρωπος είπεν, and then the same sentence, same image. If we build on that a little more fuller to where we can get rid of the dots and actually make it a normal sentence now. Ο άνθρωπος είπεν ότι Iisus estin Vasilevs. So there was something that this guy said, and it was, Jesus estin Vasilevs. So on the left, o anthropos lei oti Jesus estin Vasilevs. On the right, o anthropos ipen oti Jesus estin Vasilevs. Okay. On the left-hand side here, o anthropos lali. And this time I don't have the 3 dots. That's not going to come up anymore in this. I just kind of had to do it for the first 2 slides here with the dots and the not dots, but that's not going to be a thing all the time. Okay, so oddly, we have the same image, but the difference is now there's no 3 dots. You can actually stop the sentence there. O anthropos lali. So it's the same idea, but this one you can stop without clarifying further. The other verb you had to clarify further. On the right-hand side, o anthropos elalisen. So again, if it's current on the left-hand side, o anthropos lali, but if it's in the past on the right-hand side, o anthropos elalisen. And now, on the left-hand side, nin iini lei egoimi ini. Okay. Some of those words relate to the words we just saw, but there's some new words in there. And that's how the new words changed the concept. Nin iini lei egoimi ini. That's current, just like before. And then on the right-hand side, chthesi yini ipen, egoimi yini. So on the left-hand side, nini yini lei, egoimi yini. And on the right-hand side, chthesi yini ipen, egoimi yini. So that was a little more complicated than you would normally do in an early lesson, but I wanted the goal to be to build up really quickly to understanding the verses. So that's kind of why we had to go over something more complicated that early on. Now here's another one. Iyini katefti en iko. Iyini katefti en iko. So iyini, we just saw that word, right? So we should maybe know what that word means. Katevdi en iko. There we go. There it is. So, iyini katevdi en iko. Couple more sentences here. Vaselev sestin anir. Bam. There's that one. Vaselev sestin anir. We did not have anir yet. We did have that in my previous video, but anthropos, anir, they're sort of synonyms. So, Vaselev sestin anir. And we're describing him at this moment. We're describing that character. The next sentence, o anthropos estin epitisis. O anthropos estin epitisis. And on the right-hand side, o angelos estin en taurano. So, and this is answering a question where. For actually the second and the third one is answering a question where. So where o angelos estin en to urano, right? All right, on the left-hand side, o anthropos estin en to dendro. So o anthropos, we had that now. Estin, we had that. En, we actually had that. You may not have picked it up. I'm not trying to say it to make it feel like you. In fact, probably if you're doing things the proper way where you're not translating, you probably would not have picked up on it yet. But through repetition, it'll become clear what the meaning is. But for now, just recognizing that you had seen it before is a good thing. So let's see what that means. O anthropos estin en to dendro. And you'll notice some of my pictures are not actually accurate. And to an extent, that's not a bad thing because they can be more memorable. Obviously, when you're trying to convey the meaning, I guess there's some give and take there. But o anthropos estin en to dendro. On the right-hand side, o anthropos in en to dendro. So here the difference, just again to point this out, we have a present and a past thing going on again for this one. So the left-hand side is intended to be a present. O anthropos estin ento dendro. And on the right-hand side, that's supposed to be the same tree and the same man, but like now he would be reflecting on what happened in the past. And then as we're watching and we reflect and we describe the situation, I might say in my mind as I look at this picture, O anthropos in ento dendro. On the left-hand side, that would be like me looking at the picture at current. O anthropos estin ento dendro. So, to petinon estin ento dendro. So last time it was, I think it was o anthropos, either that or o anir. And now it's to petinon estin ento dendro. And again, like I'm not 100% sure if that's technically the correct Greek preposition there, but it's not. It won't in the long grand scheme of things for language learning. It actually won't make a difference. Eventually, as you get to a point where you can read and you just read, you will be able to learn whether that was correct or not. And it won't. Learning it slightly incorrect in the beginning stages actually will not. It's not detrimental to language learning. Like I thought it would be when I first started studying Russian. I've studied Russian for 10 years now, and I'm pretty good at it. And I remember when I first started, I was like, man, I don't want to learn anything incorrect ever. And you want to try to avoid stuff that's incorrect, but eventually, the way that language learning works is it's through repeated exposure. So as long as you're not constantly, repeatedly exposed to the wrong thing, and eventually you get away from something incorrect to stuff that is correct, it'll eventually like take over in your brain. As long as you're open to it and like actually paying attention to the new material that's coming in and attempting to improve your language. Anyway, so it's a little rant. So on the right hand side, to petinon estin ento reno. So on the left hand side we had to petinon estin ento dendro. So this is answering this question about where that creature is physically located. So is the one on the right, but he's located in a different location. To petinon estin ento urano. So on the left-hand side, we might say that he's in entodendro. On the right-hand side, we might say that he is in entourano. To petinon in entodendro. So again, now I'm kind of wanting to focus on a past and present kind of thing. So if we were to take the same deal with imagining that's the same bird, and the left-hand side, we call that the present, so that we say to petinon estin entodendro. Then if we're like now that was the present, but now we look to the right hand side and we see this new situation, and now we want to describe the past, we could say to petinon in ento dentro, because that's where he was. Tini legis. This is also kind of hard to clarify without a lot of description and through just pictures. But these are question words. So on the right hand of both of these sentences, the end of both of these sentences, that semicolon is actually a question mark. And tini and tis are both question words. So on the left hand side, we have a question, tini legis, and we've seen legis, we've seen lego, legi, legis. It's the same word, right? So we maybe know what the verb is, and it's a question. So tini legis, maybe what's the question that we're asking here? Tini legis. Yeah, so then on the right hand side, tis estin ekinis o anir. Tis estin ekinis o anir. So the difference, I think, is highlighted pretty well there between the two meanings. So on the left we have tini legis. It's a question about something. On the right hand side we have a different question that's about something different. It would be a different type of answer. Tis estin ekinos o anir. On the left-hand side here, we have tis estinen to dentro. Okay, it's a question again. Tis estinen to dentro. The question is about that figure right there, that person. So the answer would be maybe the person, o anthropos, o anir. On the right-hand side, o anthropos estinen to dentro. O anthropos estinen to dentro. So this was actually intended to be the answer to the question. So on the left we have the question, tis estinen to dentro. On the right-hand side we have the answer, o anthropos estinen to dentro. Here again, I did question and answer again. So on the left-hand side is the question, ti estinen to dentro. Ti estinen to dentro. Ti estin ento dentro. I'm not sure how you're supposed to do the rising and falling for Greek questions, but again, if your goal is just to read the Greek New Testament, it probably won't actually matter. It really doesn't matter. So just pick whatever sounds like a question to you, and that's probably fine actually. So ti estin ento dentro is on the left-hand side, and then the answer is on the right-hand side, to petinon. Is that what you pictured in your mind? To petinon. That was easy because you can actually see on the left-hand side what the answer is as well. Here's another one. On the left-hand side, Israel Vasilia Estin. So once again, a couple new words there, although one's basically the same in English, so that's not hard at all, but Israel Vasilia Estin. Okay. On the right-hand side, Vavilon Vasilia Estin. Okay, that's also pretty close to the English word as well. Vavilon Vasilia Estin. So on the left, Israel Vasilia Estin. On the right, Vavilon Vasilia Estin. Now we have on the left, Ianthropy ami isin dendris. Ianthropy ami isin dendris. That word was a pretty hard concept to illustrate. So, but you already know oanthropos, and ianthropy is just more than one of them. And dendris, you've seen todendran a couple times now, but usually with a preposition. So isin, that was imi, which we saw. The really new word there is ami, and that's what's intended to be illustrated in this image. So e anthropy ami isin dendris. And in this one, the reason that I chose this image to represent this, I was reminded of when Jesus heals the one blind man, and he's like, okay, can you see? And he's like, oh yeah, I see people walking around, but they look like trees. So that's what I was going for here with this. So e anthropy ami isin dendris. And on the right hand side, to nevma to aion amion estin to anemo. To nevma to aion amion estin to anemo. To nevma to aion amion estin to anemo. And this again was just kind of hard. It's pretty abstract, so it was hard to visualize. So η εκκλησία εστιν η βασιλεία του Θεού. So I wanted to choose O Theos. I really wanted to do a picture for that, but it is really hard it's really hard to figure out how to do a picture for God, especially one that won't be like pretty controversial. So we'll just translate that one. O Theos is the word for God. So η εκκλησία εστιν η βασιλεία του Θεού. Okay, and we did not have the word ecclesia yet. So that's not really that great of an image, but that's what you're going to get. So, η εκκλησία εστιν η βασιλεία του Θεού. It might be a little more stereotypical or prototypical if we put like a giant cross on the top. That might make it jump out the intended meaning. So, η εκκλησία εστιν η βασιλεία του Θεού. Okay, and then now we get to our first chunk of the actual text that our goal is to try to read. So the way that the bigger picture way here, we're building up to where we can understand like a phrase or a chunk of the text that we're trying to actually be able to read. And we'll kind of keep doing that and keep building up bigger chunks until we get to the end where we can mostly understand the whole passage, which is a couple of verses. So, and as I read this, try to think through these words. If this is your first time through, maybe pause it and just pick out whichever words that you can remember the picture of and do a little doodle sketch that's representative of the picture. Or if you really have a lot of time, go ahead and try to redraw the picture from memory. But if you're really busy, just do like a 5-second sketch that probably doesn't even look like the doodle, but just in your mind helps you focus on what the doodle looked like. That's what I do sometimes. I actually watch videos in Russian and YouTube, and occasionally I'll sketch out images as I'm watching, and you only got a couple seconds per image, so they don't end up looking like much. That's kind of what I had in mind. And then, yeah, so some of these words you might have known. So try to do that. Otherwise, just try to soak out as much meaning as you can, but you wouldn't be expected to get the whole meaning. It'd be pretty impossible from the little bit that we went over to get the whole meaning, and that's fine. Ideally, something like this would be done through repetition, and you'll find that each time you go through it, you'll get more and more out of it. So, Tini amia estin I vasalia tu Theou. And that was a question. Again, I'm not sure about the intonation, but that's supposed to be a question. So I'm going to just kind of give some images to help a little bit. They're not going to be the full representation, but just some images to help a little bit with the meaning. Tini ami estin I vasalia tu Theou. And then the other thing is I wrote down sentences that I feel are simpler, because the problem when you're trying to get to reading the actual verses in the Bible really quickly is that they weren't written for, people who are just learning the language. They were written for people who fluently speak the language. So there are not very many simple sentences in there. But a lot of times there are sentences that if you just tweak them a little bit, they would be simpler, or you can kind of express the same concept simpler, that kind of thing. So these are either saying the same concept, or maybe it's not even the same concept, but just related. But I felt like it's a lot easier to grasp, maybe easier to just mentally picture, but uses a lot of the same vocabulary or grammar structures. So that's kind of what's going on here. So, Pou estin I vasalia tu Theou? That's a question. That's another question word, and we haven't actually covered that question word yet, but Pou estin I vasalia tu Theou? Here's another one. Pou estin I vasalia tu Israel? And then reading the actual sentence from the text again. Tini ami estin I vasalia tu Theou. And here's another sentence that's, like a simpler related sentence, a sentence that's related somehow, but is a lot simpler. This is actually two sentences. Ti estin to nevma to agion? And the answer then to that question would be to nevma estin os o animos. So ti estin to nevma to agion? To nevma estin os o animos. And then reading again the text that we're trying to focus on. Tini amia estin I vasalia tu Theou. And now what I actually did is, this is still the verse, and I just lengthened it just a little bit. I just included a little bit more of the text. Eleyen un tini amia estin I vasalia tu Theou, ke tini amioso aftin. Eleyen un tini amia estini vasalia tu theu ke tini amioso aftin. So some images now. Hopefully those images were kind of rattling around somewhere in your brain as I read that. Eleyen un tini amia estin y vasalia tu theu ke tini amioso aftin. And then in like a simpler sentence that's got some of the same concepts in it. O Jesus ipen tiestini vasalia amia. So he said something, right? O Jesus, I didn't cover that either, but that's Jesus. It's the name, right? O Jesus ipen tiestini vasalia amia. Now I want to read that longer sentence again. Eleyen un tini amia estin y vasalia tu theu ke tini amioso aftin. Another simpler sentence. O Jesus erotisen erotima. And then the longer sentence again. Eleyen un tini amia estin y vasalia tu theu ke tini amioso aftin. And now we're going to read through the whole passage. And we'll end up doing this a series of times, I think like 4 times or something. And each time we read the whole passage, you'll see more and more words that you might know just from going through the video. At this point in the video, if you'd gone through it multiple times, or if you're just super sharp and happen to be able to pick everything up, I would not be able to just by picking it up just the first time listening through. But the words in black are intended to be words that I suspect you might be able to recognize. And the words in red are words that you probably wouldn't be able to recognize. That's what's going on there. So let me go ahead and read that long chunk. Eleyen un tini amia estin y vasalia tu theu ke tini amioso aftin. Amia estin konko sinapeos on lavon anthropos el evalen is kipan aftu ke iixisen ke egeneta is dendran ke tapetinatu ranu kateskinosin en tis cladis aftu ke palin ipen tini amioso tin vasilian tu theu amia estin zimi in lavusa yini ekrepsen is alefru sata tria eos u ezimothi olan. All right, we made it past our first chunk. Actually, everyone will go a little bit shorter now as we go because there'll be less new words. So on the left-hand side, o anir vlepi ton mikron anthropon. I'll read it again. O anir vlepi ton mikron anthropon. So we covered a lot of those words. We didn't cover the verb, and nor did we cover mikron. Okay, mikron is a little bit like the word in English, actually. So what we have is oanir, and then oanir vlepi. That's the verb. That's what he's doing. Oanir vlepi, and then the direct object, the thing that he's doing it to, the thing that he's looking at. Ton mikron anthropon. Oanir vlepi ton mikron anthropon. Okay, now let's try on the right-hand side. Oanir vlepi sporon. It's a little hard to tell what that is in that picture, but that word was in my last video, and it will come up again as well. So, oanir vlepi sporon. Oanir vlepi konkon. And those are synonyms. That's what's intended to be shown there. So you could say oanir vlepi sporon, or you could say oanir vlepi konkon, and they pretty much mean the same thing. Now for this one on the left-hand side, oanir vlepi sporon sinapeos. The new part here is synapeos, and it's telling you in this case what type of sporos you have. So there's an image to help try to illustrate that. So o anirvlepi sporon synapeos, and on the right hand side, o anirvlepi sporon synapeos. Oh, it's actually the same. I just did it to do a new image, so whichever image maybe is a little more helpful. It's really hard to get that concept in an image. So o anirvlepi sporon synapeos. O anirvlepi konkon synapeos. O anirvlepi konkon synapeos. All right, on the left-hand side, Angelas amios estin andri. So we've actually technically had all of those words so far. Just you've briefly been introduced to them. Angelas amios estin andri. Okay, on the right-hand side, Angelas uk estin anir. I did that in my last video, but the difference here. So there's a difference between the guy on the right and the guy on the left. On the left, Angelas amios estin andri, but on the right, Angelas uk estin anir. On the left-hand side, Igini lamvani ton dinarion tu andros. Okay, so we've had some of those words. Dinarion is a word that you know as denarius in English, which is actually just the Greek word that's being used there. Ton dinarion. So, Igini lamvani ton dinarion tu andros. And what is she doing to that denarius? It's not super clear in the picture, but it's kind of clear. To petinon lamvani tris sporus. To petinon lamvani tris sporus. I'll say on that left-hand side there, pretty soon that lady and that denarius are about to be gone. Igini lamvani ton dinarion tu andros. All right. On the left-hand side, we have lavusa to dinarian aftu, igini edramen. And besides the fact that the image is a little bit creepy there, this one was a pretty complicated what's going on there grammatically, but the words, we've seen most of those words. Lavusa to dinarian aftu, igini edramen. Okay. On the right-hand side, lavon dinarian apot tu andros o kleptis efien. Okay, so that's on the right-hand side. Lavon dinarian apot tu andros o kleptis efien. Kipon. That's a new word for us. Kipon. And it's what you're looking at right there. The anti estin ento kipo. I did have that word in my other video, but we didn't have it in this video yet. The anti estin ento kipo. Ikia. That's what you're looking at in the image. Ikia. Ikia ehi kipan. Ikia ehi kipan. O anirvali tin petran. O anirvali tin petran. This o anir evalen tin petran. And this is another one where I wanted to show like present day versus in the future talking about the previous day. So that's what's supposed to be happening in this image as well. On the left-hand side, what would be like, what technically would be yesterday, but we would be describing it in the present. O anirvali tin petran. On the right-hand side, what would be more like the present, but what we're talking about was what was on the left. So, Kthes o anir Evelyn tin petran. Kthes o anir Evelyn tin petran. O anthropos Evelyn ton dithan. So I just wanted to show there that the two words are synonyms, more or less. So Evelyn tin petran, Evelyn tin litan. Once again, now we're to another chunk from the text, and just whatever you can happen to recognize, understand, at least recall the image that was given earlier. That's kind of the goal. That would be what the goal would be. Amia estin konko sinapeos on lavon anthropos Evelyn is kipan aftu. Maybe those images were some images that came to your mind. Amia estin konko sinapeos on lavon anthropos Evelyn is kipan aftu. All right, kind of a related but simpler sentence. O anthropos Evelyn ton sporon is ton kipan. And now let's look at the passage. Once again, the fuller passage. You'll notice that there's a few more words now that you might be able to recognize that are highlighted in black. Elien un tini amia estin e Vasilia tu theu, que tini amioso aftin. Amia estin konko sinapeos on lavon anthropos, Evelyn is kipan aftu, que iixisen, que egeneta is dendran, que tapetina tu ranu kateskinosen, en tis cladis aftu, que palen ipen, tini amioso tin vasilian tu theu. Amia estin zimi in lavusa ini eclipsen is alefru sata tria eos u ezimothi olan. All right, moving on. To petinon kathevdi en folia. To petinon kathevdi en folia. To petinon kathevdi en folia. To dendran. We've actually seen this word quite a bit already. To dendran. To dendran ferikarpon. To dendran ferikarpon. I'm going to read at the top now. To micron dendran aixisete is dendran mega. To micron dendran aixisete is dendran mega. This is supposed to be it's supposed to be one tree that's represented in that image. That's just one tree. To micron dendran aixisete and is dendran mega, and a passage of time. Now for the longer sentence on the bottom. Omikros ochlos aixisen is ochlan megan que dialayizanta I echien I kanon vroma pasin. Okay, this is a kind of a complicated image, so I'll read it again here. Omikros ochlos ixisen is ochlan megan que dialayizanta I echien I kanon vroma pasin. All right, don't be intimidated by that one. That was quite the jump. So Ope seyeneta anir. Opes eyeneta anir. This is the same that's intended to be the same person, but this is like a passage of time, you know. Opes eyeneta anir. And on the right hand side, ipes eyeneta yini. So if we have an opes, then we say opes eyeneta anir. But if we have ipes, then we would say ipes eyeneta yini. So again, that was the same with the passage of time. In pes, in neos. In pes, in neos. On the right hand side, huc est in pes, aixanti egeneta anir. So once again, this is just like last time, this is intended to be the same person with a passage of time. So on the left hand, we have in pes. Imagine the right hand image is like the present. So then on the left, we would describe that as in pes, in neos. But then on the right hand side, because it's the present, we would say huc est in pes, aixanti egeneta anir. Και ixisen και εγένετα εις δέντραν. And this was, we're actually back to the Bible again already. This is the passage from the text. Και ixisen και εγένετα εις δέντραν. Το δέντραν ixisen. Ο σπόρος εγένετα δέντραν. Now we know some more words, and we're getting pretty close to the end. Let me read the full text again. Έλεγεν ουν τίνη αμία εστιν η βασιλεία του Θεού, και τίνη αμοιώσω αυτήν. Αμία εστιν κόγκο συνάπεως ον λαβών άνθρωπος, έβαλεν εις κήπαν εαυτού, και ηξίσεν και εγένετα εις δέντραν, και τα πετεινά του ουρανού κατεσκήνωσεν εν της κλάδης αυτού, και πάλιν είπεν, τίνη αμοιώσω την βασιλείαν του Θεού. Αμία εστιν ζήμη in λαβούσα γηνή, έκρυψεν εις αλέφρου σάτα τρία έως ου εζημώθη όλαν. All right, moving on, starting at the top. Οι άντρες κατόκισεν εν τη πόλη. Οι άντρες κατόκισεν εν τη πόλη. Το πετεινόν κατόκισεν εν το δέντρο. Το πετεινόν κατόκισεν εν το δέντρο. Το πετεινόν κατοικεί εν τη φωλιά αυτού. Το πετεινόν κατοικεί εν τη φωλιά αυτού. On the left hand side, κλάδας του δέντρου. Κλάδας του δέντρου. Τα πετεινά εν της κλάδης μένουσιν. Τα πετεινά εν της κλάδης μένουσιν. All right, now we're on to another passage from the text. Και τα πετεινά του ουρανού κατεσκήνωσεν εν της κλάδης αυτού. Και τα πετεινά του ουρανού κατεσκήνωσεν εν της κλάδης αυτού. Το πετεινόν κατόκισεν εν το δέντρο. All right, reading it again. Again, like I said, that was pretty short. The next one's actually going to be a little bit longer just because there's so many words from that last set that we don't know yet. But Elien un tini amia estini vasalia tu theu, que tini amioso aftin. Amia estin konko sinapeos, on lavon anthropos evalen iskipan aftu, que ixisen, que egeneta isdendran, que tapetinanturanu kateskinosen en tis cladis aftu, que palin ipen, tini amioso tin vasalia tu theu. Amia estin zimi, in lavusa yini, eclipsen is alefru, sata tria eos u ezimothi olan. All right. Oanir amiazi to adolfo aftu. Oanir amiazi to adolfo aftu. We didn't cover Adolfos, but it's a family word. Oanir amiazi to Adolfo aftu. Ipes amiazi Dimitri artis. Ipes amiazi Dimitri artis. All right. Another one with the text. I guess I was wrong. The longer part I think is after this one. It's coming soon, but Kepalen ipen tini amioso tin vasilian tu theu. I vasilia tu theu amia esti dendro. All right, reading the text again. Alien un tini amia estini vasilia tu theu, que tini amioso aftin. Amia estin konko sinapeos on lavon anthropos, evalen iskipan aftu, que ixisen que geneta is dendran, que tapetinatu kateskinosen en tis claris aftu, que palin ipen tini amioso tin vasilian tu theu. Amia estin zimi in lavusa yini eclipsen is aleftro sata tria eos u ezimothi olan. All right. On the left-hand side, Oanir eclipsen tin yineka aftu. So we know Oanir, tin yineka, probably aftu. Never actually explained it, but it's come up a lot. Oanir eclipsen. Eclipsen is the verb. It's the thing that's being done. That's probably the new word, and that's the thing being done. Oanir eclipsen tinineka aftu. So what's he doing? Oanir eclipsen tinineka aftu. Probably in this case, I think that's the mailman, and maybe the husband is jealous of the mailman, and he's afraid that the mailman's coming for his wife. That's kind of the scenario that I imagine in that picture. Oanir eclipsen tinineka aftu. On the right-hand side, Iyini eclipsen to dinarian aftis. So we've had Iyini to dinarian. Aftis, aftu is the same word, and I didn't cover it, but it's been used a lot, so maybe you know what it is. Iyini eclipsen to dinarian aftis. So what is she doing with this denarius? It's not very clear, but in this one, I had family members that would hide money in books. So that's what's supposed to be illustrated there. So, Eine eclipsen to dinarian aftis. All right, here's a bunch of images, and so just to go over them real quick in case the images are not clear. But at the top left, that is an that's supposed to be an image of a pile of flour. So if you imagine that you took a container of flour, a bag of flour, you cut the top off and then you tipped it over and dumped it out and watched it fall onto the floor in this giant pile. That's what's going on right there. In below that then is pretty obvious. I think that's a loaf of bread. Then the one in the middle is kind of like a grandma with a bunch of flour all over her. You can imagine that instead of dumping the flour on the floor, maybe you dumped the flour on your grandma for some reason. And the one on the right is pretty obvious as well. That's just a seed. So Alefran estin en to arto. Alefran estin en to arto. Ianthropy estiosin alefran ot ianthropy estiosin artan. Ianthropy estiosin alefran ot ianthropy estiosin artan. Ianthropy monon estiosin alefran metato epsise afto. Ianthropy monon estiosin alefran metato epsise afto. Alefran ginete ek ton sporon. Alefran ginete ek ton sporon. Alefran episen epitin gineka. Alefran episen epitin gineka. All right, and here's a series of images. And in the last ones, as you can tell, I decided to switch to the images instead of starting with the words. O artas ezimothi en ti ikia. O artas ezimothi en ti ikia. En eratitini uk estius in artan zimoton. This would be like geared towards the image on the right. So, en eratitini uk estius in artan zimoton. En to pascha Iudei monan estiusin artan aziman. En to pascha Iudei monon estiusin artan aziman. En to pascha Iudei monon estiusin artan uk ezimoti. Artas azimas ginete choris zimis. Okay, so this is a sequence here, starting at the top. En petinon, dia petina, tria petina. En petinon, dia petina, tria petina. Isanir, dia andres, tris andres. Isanir, dia andres, tris andres. Mia gini, dia gineques, tris gineques. Mia gini, dia gineques, tris gineques. Igini zimi ton artan epiisen. Igini zimi ton artan epiisen. Izimi esti tin sacharin. Izimi esti tin sacharin. Izimi esti tin sacharin. O artas anistate oti izimi esti tin sacharin. O artas anistate oti izimi esti tin sacharin. Eclipsen is alefru satatria. So you already saw tria is 3, and I don't think it hurts to translate that. It's almost the same word in English, actually, but you'll notice the image doesn't have 3. That's just oops. So, Eclipsen is alefru satatria. Maybe you can imagine that one of them is hidden behind the door there, and then that would work. Eclipsen is alefru satatria. Sata. Sata. It's a certain amount of something. There's a specific amount of something that would be sata. So satatria would be 3 of them. Eclipsen is alefru satatria. How many satatria? Melas. Olan to petinon in melan. Olan petinon in melan. Meras tu petinu in melan. So now that we've gotten these to explain, at the top there we have melas, which is that color, melas. Then the second one, the image towards the right, you'll see that color, melas, and at the end it says in melon. But olan to petinon in melon, it's how much of him is that color. Olan to petinon in melon. And then towards the bottom left, you notice that a lot of it is the same, tu petinu in melon, but the first part represents again how much of him is that color. Meras tu petinu in melon. So now then we can look at the bottom right. Eos u ezimoti olan. Eos u ezimoti olan. All right, we're back to some text again. Amia estenzimi in lavusa yini eclipsen is alefro sata tria eos u ezimothi olan. Hopefully some of those images would have been conjured up into your mind from the sentence. Amia estenzimi in lavusa yini eclipsen is alefro sata tria eos u ezimothi olan. Yini eclipsen zimin is to alefran. I'll read that again. Yini eclipsen zimin is to alefran. So is to alefran is answering the question where. Yini eleven tin zimin. All right, and the final reading of the text, most of the words now have been, would at least be, roughly, vaguely, a little bit familiar, something you feel like maybe you've seen before. That's about all we can go for with a shorter, video like this. Alien un tini amia estin y vasalia tu theu, que tini amioso aftin. Amia estin conco sinapeos, on lavon anthropas evelen iskipan aftu, que iixisen, que egeneta is dendran, que tapetinatu kateskinosen en tis cladis aftu, que palen ipen, tini amioso tin vasalian tu theu, amia estensimi, in lavusa yini, eclipsen is alefru, sata tria eos, u ezimothi olan.